What is going on, Life Fitness Coaches? Welcome to another episode of the Change Lives, Make Money on the Train podcast. It's your boy, B Mark, and in today's episode, we're in the studio, and I'm here with my wife, Kirsten Mark.
Yes.
Hello.
Hello. Are you excited?
This is so cool. Fun fact, we used to do podcasts all the time, and then I got into contest prep, and I decided to ditch her.
I actually love doing the podcast, and genuinely, when he said he didn't want to do them anymore, I was like offended, one, and then I was like, but I like them. So I'm really excited that we're back.
I wasn't saying it because I didn't like you. I was just saying it because I had, I was tired, I was tired. I had a lot of stuff going on. So
I do get it now. I do get it now. He did have a lot going on, but it was called, what was it? Monday with the Marks?
It was Monday with the Marks. Yeah.
Yeah, it was Monday with the Marks. We did it every single week. And I definitely had a period of grief where Mondays would come and I was like, we aren't doing our podcast.
He doesn't love me anymore.
I did. But then I attacked that belief. I was like, Kirsten, he's busy and he's in prep. It's fine.
So if you guys are interested in hearing about Monday with the Marks, just let us know if you guys want it. So comment I'm in below. Today's conversation is about the universe. Okay. Now, Kirsten and I went out for dinner with a couple friends the other day, and I'm going to read you a quote that I wrote down while we were in the middle of a conversation because I think the quote resonated on a very deep level, and I want to share it with you guys. So this is the quote that I wrote down after Kirsten started talking. She's talking about the flow of the universe. She said, trust the strong intellectual pull of the universe. And then I interpreted, set the goal of exactly what you want and have absolute faith in the process and know that the how isn't up to you. So we were talking initially at dinner about Bali. So do you want to share a little bit about your experience with Bali and your mom and how you were feeling in that moment?
So we were having, it was such a good conversation. Those dinners that you go out for and you just I don't like surface level conversations. And I feel like we just dived right into the good stuff. So I was talking about, and a lot of you guys that have watched me for quite some time know this story, but about how I left everything in Kelowna. I left my job, I left my daughter, and jobs. I had 3 jobs in Kelowna that I just pieced out, and I went to Bali to work on my online business. And I think a lot of people get to places in their life where they need to make a really risky decision. They need to make a really intense decision. But instead of listening to that pull of the universe and your own internal dialogue, you listen to what other people say is best for you. And so Ryan was my coach at the time, and he had said that I should come to Bali. I had fallen, I had hit my tooth, and he's like, in Bali, you can get your tooth fixed for $100. And in Canada, it's thousands and thousands of dollars.
So in Canada, if you have your chipped tooth and you get it fixed in Canada, it's like $1,000 to $2,000. But in Bali, you can fly there for $1,500 and then get your tooth fixed for $500. So you get dentist and a vacation. So I basically pitched her that idea.
Yeah. So I didn't need to get my tooth fixed in the end, but what that message from Brian did was it planted a seed of curiosity. And I was like, oh, I could just go to Bali. I never thought that was something that was accessible to me because I have a full-time job here. I have my daughter. But the truth was that in Kelowna at that point in time, I was miserable, for lack of a better word. I was unhappy with where I was working. I was unhappy in a relationship that was not serving me, but I kept running back to, if there was 24 hours where we didn't talk, I would run back after that 24 hours. And so I was in this comfort zone that felt really, I actually don't like the word comfort zone. It's complacent zone, downhill zone, because your comfort zone really doesn't feel good most of the time. And nothing was changing in the environment that I was in. And so when he said that, I was like, I need to get the fuck out of here. So I called my mom one night after drinking some wine, and I said, I want to go to Bali. If I go to Bali for 4 weeks, will you watch Haley for me? And my mom was like, I don't think that you should go. She almost begged me, and don't go with these 2 strange men. And I told her, I'm like, well, if I go, will you watch Haley? And she's like, of course I'll watch Haley. And I'm like, whether you want me to go or not, I'm going to go. And so this was 5 days before I left. It was really last minute. I had told Haley's dad, he was not in support of me going. I think every single human being in my life thought that I was absolutely fucking crazy. And this is the point where most human beings, you guys, would have listened to the outside voices and made the decision not to book the ticket. there was something inside of my body. And this is where I say like a universal pull that told me like, not only like, should I go, that I needed to go. And that if I didn't go on this trip, that I was going to continue to be in a relationship that made me feel like shit. I was going to continue to work a job that literally did not like serve me on any level. I was so sick. I was so tired. I was overworked. I was burnt out, which I don't even like that word. And nothing was changing. And so I got in my car the day of my flight, and the entire way, I remember thinking about turning around. I don't need to go. Maybe I should listen. Maybe this is a bad idea. But again, there was this like deeper feeling, and I don't know the best way to describe it. All I can say is that I felt like a higher power was driving the car, and the voices were just not able to get through. And anytime they did come up, something just kept me like on that road through tears, through doubt, through messages saying, I really don't think you should go. And we get to the airport, and Brian, who I've always felt like, I don't know, just like safe in his energy. It was him, and it was another guy that we were going with. And Brian's passport fucking.
Okay, well, let me tell this part of the story. So we get to the airport. I'm all ready to go. I'm like, this is going to be the best trip ever. We're going on a trip. Blah, 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 blah. So we get to the airport. Entrepreneurs solve problems. So we get to the airport, and I literally am about to check in for my flight, and I'm walking through security, and the security guard goes, you can't come. And I was like, pardon me? He's like, yeah, you can't come on this flight. I'm like, what do you fucking mean I can't come on this flight? He's like, your passport expires in 5 months, and you can't leave the country if your passport expires within 6 months, because there's a chance you could be gone for longer than 6 months. And so you can't come. So I was like, okay. And it was like me, Kirsten, Corey sitting in the airport. And I was like, well, you guys go and I'll meet you there.
So then it's like, I didn't know Corey as well as like I'd known Brian. Like, honestly, I didn't know either of them like very well at the time. But in that moment, again, it was like, should I just not go? Is this a sign? Is this a sign like that I should just get in my car and drive back home? But still, like the pull, like I wish I could explain it in like a way that would just like land so hard for you guys. But it was like, I just knew that staying in Kelowna and continuing to do what I was doing was not working, would not work. And I was going to live a life of mediocrity and like dissatisfaction. So I got on the plane and I went. And I think there's a lot of opportunities for probably lots of you guys watching or listening to this podcast where you let fear take over instead of just like listening to that, like whether it's the universal pull, it's a higher power. Maybe it's just like yourself, like, and not the outside voices.
Yeah, I want to jump in here.
Yeah.
I have something to say about this. So
Yeah.
that idea of the universal pull is so important. And the reason it's so important, I think, is because there are so many people that live their entire life in their ego.
Mhm.
And the idea of the universal pull is very simple, in my opinion. Here's how it works. It's this idea that we all have goals, dreams, and ambitions and things that we'd like to achieve. All of us have aspirations of the type of life that we'd like to live. And I would call that like a connection to like a higher power. Like there's not a dream that's put inside you for any other reason than like you to manifest. That's my belief. And so like, I believe if there's a dream inside of you, it's because like the creator, a higher power wants you to manifest it. That's my honest truth. And then, so we've got this like side of us that likes to dream, that has big ambitions, that has big goals, whatever. And then we've also got our ego. And our ego is the voice, it's the comfort zone, it's the part of our mind that tries to keep us safe. The ego is based on security. The ego is based on safety. The ego is based on the mind. The ego is based on habits. And so, of course, when you have goals, dreams, and ambitions, and you want to go somewhere with life and you want to do something different, like that in itself is going to put the ego at risk, because your ego, your sense of identity, looks for security. And there's security in what we know, which is why so many people would rather stay in relationships that are unhealthy. They would rather work at jobs that they don't like. They would rather stay secure, even though they know it's not making them happy, because even though it might not be happy, it's making them safe. And so I think that the universal pull is like, I have this like goal, this dream, this ambition, this desire to achieve more. And the universal pull is that I feel like the ego is loud. Like the ego is like, stay inside, stay in bed. You don't need to get up. You know, you don't need to do all these things. You don't need to go to Bali. Like you're making a mistake. The ego is like super loud. And I almost feel like the universal pull, like your intuition is this like quiet voice.
Mhm.
And it's this like quiet voice that just whispers
Mhm.
and it just whispers. And it's like,
Mhm.
you should go. You should go. And I feel like the reason that a lot of people have a hard time with it is because it's like the ego is so loud that sometimes it's hard to hear that like inner voice.
Well, and think about it like this too. So you have the ego, but you also have the societal pull, which the societal pull would be what society says you should do. So let's talk about moms for an example. So for moms, the example is if you're a mom, you're not upping and leaving your kids for 4 years. So you have the ego that's like chatting at you. And then you have society telling you that if you're a mom, you're at home and you're doing like mom things. And so that small voice can seem so quiet, but like it can be quiet, but it's like, and I know you've had this as well before, where it's overpowering, where it's like it comes to a place where it doesn't matter what society tells you to do. It doesn't matter like what the little devil on your shoulder is telling you to do. You just know that you need to do something different and you need to go against like what's normal and what people are telling you. And then
Yep.
you,
I know I have a story for you. I'm going to hit you right in your feelers. You're not
oh,
expecting that.
no, because I could tell with you guys, he looked at me like with these eyes and I was like, what is he looking like? What is
I'm going to hit you right in your feelers. You're not even going to see it coming. Bam!
Bam!
Right in the
right in the feels.
So when Kirsten and I became a client coach, I thought she was super hot. But
Mhm.
I said to myself, I was like, I will never, ever, ever date another client because my previous relationship I was in was a fitness coach on my team. We were in this relationship. And when we broke up, it was fucking hell. Like it was like the worst, which is why if you're my client, I advise you to never, ever, 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 ever get into business with your spouse because I literally, the amount of clients that I've seen do this and then it burns to the ground and they have to separate their business is crazy. Anyways, so I made a decision. I was like, I will never, ever, ever mix business with pleasure again. That was my decision. So even though I thought Kirsten was super hot and funny
And talented
and talented
and smart.
and had a big butt, even though
And a
all
big
those
butt.
things were true, I was like, I will never, ever, 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 ever cross that line. And because I had that like belief, it allowed me to get super close to Kirsten because I was like, this is super safe because I will never, ever, ever get close to you. So I don't give a shit. Like I'll tell her anything. So I literally would tell her anything. I would go out with other girls on dates and I'd be texting Kirsten being like, ha ha ha, on this date. And I felt super safe and secure doing it because I'm like, I'm never, ever, ever going to date you. So it doesn't matter. So Kirsten and I used to call each other like 3 or 4 times a day when we were best friends. And then there was this one day where I called her and I was like, I had this like overwhelming sense to tell her that I loved her. And it wasn't just like an overwhelming sense to tell her that I loved her. It was like, I needed her to know that I like loved her more than a friend. So we were on the phone and like, we always used to say like, I love you when we hung up because we were BFFAE. But I like called her at the end of the call and I was like, I love you. He's like, I love you too. I was like, no, I like love you. And in that moment, that was like a big risk for me because like I didn't know how she fucking felt about me. Like I didn't know where we stood in this moment, but I just felt this like pull. And it was like the universe being like, you need to tell her, like, don't be a pussy, like tell her. So I literally was like, I love you more than that. Like, I love you. And then she was like, I love you back. And that was the start of our little fucking
Our little
thing we got going
union.
on.
Our little union.
Our little
Is that what
union.
you call it? Yeah.
So the same thing happened when I asked her to marry me.
No,
So
communion.
communion. Yes. Same thing happened when I asked her to marry me. So story goes, we applied for a reality TV show. We got accepted. It was Amazing Race Canada. We went through like 3 interview stages and we got it past the first interview. And then we got a call saying you're on the show. And this was a big life choice for us. We were like, what the fuck? We were still dating at the time, just dating. And I remember like, we were like, okay, we'll go on the show and we can work on our business like while we're on break. And then we'll, go on the show. And the show was like, nope, if you come on the show, you have to leave your phones at home. You cannot work on your business for 6 weeks. So Kirsten and I were faced with a very intense decision. It's like, do we go on the show and risk our business or do we not go on the show and keep building our shit? And I remember like we were both super torn and none of us were certain in which direction. And then I had like a day to myself to think. And I was like, well, I could go on the show and it could be a blast. It could grow my business. Or I could not go on the show and I could just grow my business. Which of these two would I rather? And then I thought to myself, it doesn't matter which one I do it with, as long as I do it with Kirsten. And then I was like, I want to do everything with Kirsten. And then I was like, I want to do everything forever with Kirsten. And then I was like, I need to ask you to marry me. So I went and bought a ring that day and asked you to marry me that day.
Same day. And you guys, like, we hadn't been dating. Like,
it was a year.
Yeah, it was a year. So,
yeah.
But like a year of like lots of ups and downs and like really like working through like we had our own shit, right? Like it wasn't really working through things. It was like Brian battling his demons and me battling my demons and us really getting to a place where we could create the relationship that we wanted. So the first year of our relationship was honestly messy. So from an outsider looking in, we probably like people would be like, they aren't ready for marriage. But again, that's the societal pull, right? Like society saying like, well, if this is happening or you're fighting or you're arguing, right?
Mhm.
So like we had a lot of ups and downs. And I always knew. I always knew. Even like there was a point where like when I went to Bali, I was madly like in love with Brian. And it's funny because he says his beliefs were like, I'd never do anything with a client. And then my argument is that my beliefs were so much more powerful. Because I already knew. I was like, okay, you can say that. But I was like, I want to marry this dude. Like, he's so smart. He does things so differently. He's different than any other human being that I've met. Like, I love him. I was like, I don't like the word obsessed, but I was very into this human being. And so my belief was that I just got to win him over. And even when he said to me, like, I don't date clients, I don't date clients, I don't date clients, I was like, we'll see. We'll see. And we would like kind of like flirt back and forth. But then there came a place where I kind of just accepted that we were friends. And honestly, I was like, I would rather like have some sort of relationship than no relationship at all. And I think that's another like law of the universe is that when you stop obsessing over something so deeply and you start thinking about it every day and you almost just like let go and you allow the universe to do its work, that's when, and that's kind of what happened with us, right? Like at first I was like, no. And then we built this friendship. And then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to let it go. I'm going to live my life. I'm going to focus on me. I'm going to build this business. I'm going to like show him how hard of a worker I am and what I can do. And I just like built this beautiful friendship with you. And from that, like when I was like, okay, I'm good with just being friends, that's when you were like, I love you. And I was like, the fuck, where was this 4 months ago?
So we got to wrap this up because I got a training in 5 minutes. So I want to make this about you guys. I have a question for you. Okay. What have you known that you've needed to do, but you haven't taken action on? What do you know that you've needed to do, but you haven't taken action on? What is that one thing, that one direction, that one dream that you have that you know you've been putting on the back burner and you've almost been silencing the inner voice because you've been listening to the ego? What is that one thing you like know for sure in your heart that you need to start doing this thing, but for some reason you haven't taken action because you don't have the time, you don't have the money, it's inconvenient, it's hard, whatever it is. What's that one thing? And like my message to you to end this podcast is to start listening to that inner voice and start tapping into that intuition, because like there's a reason that dream exists inside of you. And my belief is that there's not a single dream that exists inside of me that I'm not capable of manifesting. But it's my responsibility to follow the signs. It's my responsibility to trust the universe. It's my responsibility to do the work that's going to get me closer to my goal, even if it's inconvenient and even if it doesn't make sense in the moment.
I love that. And I think like, think big, because a lot of the time what you need to do is scary and it comes with a lot of fear. And like, I think the people that actually face those fears and listen to their deep internal dialogue actually get what they want out of life. Cause I know for a fact that if I had not taken that trip and faced my fears and still like driven through the tears, that I wouldn't be sitting here right now. So I think like, think big, do something big, take serious action, not small action.
Well, guys, that's it. That's all. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you guys want more Monday with the Marks, screenshot this podcast episode, share it to your Instagram stories, tag at The Real Brian Mark and The Real Kirsten Mark. And babe, where do they find you?
You can find me on all social media platforms, The Real Kirsten Mark. I copied Brian's IG handle because we're married and that's something I'm allowed to do. And then Kirsten Mark. Yeah, Kirsten Mark everywhere. Dark hair, fake boobs, tattoos.
Brian Mark everywhere on YouTube, podcast app, Instagram. You guys all know all the places. Peace, love, and protein. Have the best day ever. We'll talk to you guys in the next episode. Let's go.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. Hopefully you got some value. If you did, and you want to learn more about how me and my team can help you scale your online fitness business to $10,000 a month, DM me 10K on Instagram at The Real Brian Mark for more information, and I'll reach out to you to see if I can help you grow an online coaching business.